So what we've got here is the Geeks 3D GPU test, which is a really old benchmarking and graphics card kind of testing utility. Stress test and benchmarking. Like the latest releases from 2014, and that's on any platform. It's not just like kind of abandoned on Mac. It's just kind of abandoned. It's kind of OpenGL stuff, but it still works, even though the GUI for both Mac and Windows is now spotty, and you generally have to run it as a script. I haven't seen anyone running these because they're so irrelevant. I haven't seen anyone running these on these new Macs, but I thought it'd be interesting. So as you can see here, we've got the slightly brighter lines are the new M1 Max, which is a 32 core graphics card. And this blue line is the Furmark, which is just like a furry donut floating around. I mean, Furmark, you can look that up. And that's more of just a generic graphics stress test. And this green line, and all of the green lines are the Testmark X64, which means it's doing tessellation, the 64X tessellation, which is just curious. They're different, different brands of graphics cards have very different performance relative, between Furmark and Testmark. And anyway, I just wanted to kind of point out, so I've got everything going back to things as old as the HD 4870, which can't do tessellation, but has a pretty decent Furmark score. That's the desktop graphics card, the upgrade for a 2009 Mac Pro. And you can look at its Furmark score. All of these are done, 1024 by 640 resolution with no anti-aliasing. And I can't really go back and change that because I don't own most of these anymore. We look 49. I mean, that's pretty good. That's still double what the final Intel MacBook Air would have done. So I can tell you that there was actually some horsepower, even if the thing was out of date. But, that's basically 12% of what the M1 Max does. And you look at what's the most comparable. It's really hard to say, but basically it lands somewhere between, like a 1080 Ti and a 3060 Ti on the NVIDIA side, which is, desktop cards, which is pretty impressive. And you can look at here, this is the 5500M for the, this is the previous 16-inch MacBook Pro. There's both in Catalina and Windows 10. It does about 130, 125 frames a second versus 411. So this is a huge upgrade. Up here, 25 is what a Retina MacBook Pro with integrated graphics does. But 34 is what I was getting with the M370X. So I'm not sure how that's possible. That really seems like wasn't actually using the Radeon, but apparently it was. Anyway, point is that's pretty powerful in this raw test. And then you go over here to the screen line, GPU test, the Testmark X64 is a tessellation. What's interesting there is you can see the 980 Ti, both on Windows and on High Sierra, is very similar in tessellation, despite being as slow as 50% and as fast as 70% in Furmark, because basically because NVIDIA is really good at tessellation. As if you look at some of these Radeon cards, they don't have the same jumps. Even down here, a 6700 XT actually gets a higher Furmark score than Testmark score. So I've tested all those, which is really fun. And basically it says, this thing is pretty powerful. It's 980 Ti tessellation, and it's serious. It's faster it's faster in some ways than like a 1080 Ti, which is an old card at this 4 years old, but also it's a big monster, and it's probably in the range of a 3060, 3050 Ti desktop. I don't know if there's a 3050 Ti desktop, but it's definitely not nothing. And again, this is in like gaming style OpenGL graphics too, it doesn't tell you much because it's all kind of depreciated, but it is an interesting comparison. And then we're going to go look at one other benchmark I haven't seen anyone do. So these are transcode, Handbrake transcoding for a Blu Ray rip, basically MKV from a Blu Ray disc, so 1080p 30 MKV, but from an SSD, so not having to come off of a disc. And we're just transcoding them to H.264. The top chart here is running sort of the CPU transcoding, and the bottom chart is using the GPU, whether that's VCE or video or VCE for AMD cards, or NV encoder for NVIDIA, or Video Toolbox for Macs, Macintosh. So yeah, we can just look at these. The blue ones are things that happened on the Mac Pro. Unfortunately, I didn't realize that this was a separate option for a lot of my GPUs before I got rid of them. So I got Vega 56, 5500 XT. Whereas up here, these are mostly just running different operating systems, High Sierra, Catalina, Big Sur, and you can see that just didn't matter much. Those are dual x5675, so it's a 12 core, which is pretty impressive. That actually was faster than the Windows version. It was faster than Windows running on the 16-inch Intel MacBook Pro, but a little bit slower than the Mac OS Catalina version. So basically, you can say is that the 2009 Mac Pro with a processor upgrade, so called a 2010 Mac Pro, the fastest chips that those ever actually shipped with, not the fastest they can take, is about in line with the 2019 Mac Pro, which is pretty good. You're talking, you're getting up to the 45 to 55 frames a second there. And one's interesting down here, 10th Gen i5 was starting to edge close to like the 49 i7 of 4th Gen. And the M1 down here was doing a good job. It was about real time, which is faster than older MacBooks and doubled the speed of the last Intel, not even the base model, the i5 of the one before it. So that's pretty good. But then here's what our M1 Max did, and it went to over 82 frames a second average over the whole task, which is pretty awesome. At that point, you were crushing Ryzen 2700X, but this 5900X I have is supremely fast. You can actually look, and it's faster than the vast majority of GPUs. I'm not sure if something was wrong in the settings when I had my 3060 Ti and 6700 XT, because I'm shocked that they're slower than the 1080 Ti, but apparently the data I currently have says that the only piece I've had faster than a 5900X, even using GPU render, which is a GPU transcode, which is usually fast, is use a 1080 Ti here. So yeah, basically the M1 Max using about 30 watts versus the 5900X pulling about 140. So we're talking about 4.5 times the power to get about a 50% performance improvement from 80 to a little over 120, a little over 80 to like 129. So this 50% improvement would be like 126, and this was like 129. So basically 50% faster for over 4 times the power, which, yeah, that's a huge win if you actually look at this in terms of efficiency. So an M1 Max with a higher power draw, with a 60 watt cooler in a small desktop configuration or something, would that was designed to take 60 watts off the processor, would definitely go past what this does with 140. And then this bottom chart mostly shows that there should be a huge potential. This long line, that's actually the 8-core M1 in a Mac Mini, and it's crazy. I mean, it's faster at the GPU encoding than a Vega 56, and it's basically in line with what I got out of the 6700 XT. It's faster than the 5500M in the previous MacBook, 16-inch MacBook from Intel. But for some reason, if you look down here, M1 Max, 32 gigs, 1 terabyte, like that ran at 60 frames a second. it wasn't like locked. It was just average, right about 60. And that's wrong. Clearly there's a bug, but there's so many bugs with Monterey so far that fundamentally that doesn't shock me. It's just disappointing. At some point we will see, and in theory I would believe that this would go from what we had here at about 130, 140. I believe that you'd probably get 400 frames a second on this. And based on some of the exporting that's been done with video editing software, there's no reason, I don't doubt that you can double up on the speed that something like a 1080 Ti could do, because that's not, 1080 Ti shouldn't be the top of the line anymore. I just fundamentally don't believe that these 3060 and 67 XT scores, I don't believe they're not screwed up. It would be shocking to me. But I know that this 1080 and the M1 Max were using exactly the same settings, and so was the M1. So that means fundamentally, I'd be shocked if once this gets sorted out, we didn't double the 1080 Ti here. And then you got to look at your quality, what you want. But the point is, this is more to show that there are still bugs than anything else, because we've seen all the video editing app exports already, and they show how well this M1X or M1 Max can crush 3090s and 5950Xs. So since I don't have that showing, it means something is broken in Handbrake 1.4.2, or in Monterey, because I've heard people saying even their M1 chips on Monterey betas were having problems. So a lot of glitches in Monterey. It's unfortunate that the software is not ready for this hardware.